Hello again. This is the second part of chapter 2 video. The first part I went over some basic concepts in algebra, and in this video I'm going to apply them and also do many of the problems um, on Newton-Alta's side. And we're going to call this video, of course, B part of chapter 2. Alright, so let's get started. I don't really need the my picture to be there because it takes part of the screen and we need the whole screen. Okay, so let's just start by the first section in chapter 2. This is in Newton-Alta. Those are the assignments that you have to do. So here is the first one, and it's on coordinate plane and coordinates plane and the distance formula. Okay, it says find the midpoint of the line segment with the endpoints that are given. Well, we know that, let me clean this up so I can write on it. So let's pick this and write on it. So we know the midpoint, basically, the x coordinate of it would be the middle of these two numbers. That means 13 plus negative 13 divided by 2, which is really 0. And then the y coordinate would be middle of these two numbers, which is negative 14 plus 10 divided by 2. And that would be negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. So the midpoint, remember you have to enter an ordered pair. So midpoint is the x coordinate 0 and the y coordinate has to be negative 2, right? So 0, negative 2, and that's the formula that we talked about. I'm finding midpoint. Alright, it says the graph of the equation negative 3x minus 4, they have to graph it. Well, we know that this right here is the y-intercept, right? Negative 4. So that's 1 point. So I need to move to negative 4, click on it, and you see the 0, negative 4. So that has to be there. Now we need another point. The slope is negative 3 over 1. So that means if I go, let me create a white page so we can write on. So negative 3 over 1 is the slope. Now we know this point right there is 0, negative 4. So the slope says if you add 1 to x, you have to subtract 3 from y. That means if I move to the right one, I have to go down 3. So if I add 1 to 0, I have to subtract 3 from 4, so from negative 4. Negative 4 minus 3, that's negative 7. So the other point is going to go to this point. Another point that I need is not here, but it has to be way down there at 1 and negative 7. So I'm going to do that. So based on that, negative 3 over 1, if I add 1 to the x, if I'm over here, right, that's 1. The y coordinate has to be negative 7 right there. So that's the equation of this line, negative 3x minus 4. All right. Find the midpoint of the line. I'll let you do that because we did one similar to it. It says find the distance between the 2 points. Well, we know about distance formula. So let's get a whiteboard here. Now we know the distance formula is square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So distance here is going to be square root of something minus something squared plus something minus something squared here. Now what's something here? Well, that would be x2. If you assume this is x2, it would be 0 minus x1, and then this is y2, negative 1, minus y1, negative 5. Now notice that the minuses are part of the formula, so d is going to be negative 4 is positive 4, squared is 16, negative 1 plus 5 is 4, 4 squared is 16, so that's 32, square root of 32. Now we know 32 is actually 8 times 4, or 4 times 8, or 2 times 16 actually, right? 2 times 16, so that's 4 square root of 2. So 4 square root of 2 should be the answer. 4 square root of 2. Alright? So that's the distance, and that's the distance formula. Alright, to graph this again, let's do it again. So we have to go to 1 on the y-axis. That's, click on that so you can get the coordinates, 0, 1. That's the correct one on the line. Now we need one more. Again, the slope is negative 2 over 1. That means if I go up, go right 1, I have to go down 2. So from here, if I go right 1, I have to go down 2. There. And if I click on these, you can see the coordinates. In other words, if I add 1 to 0, becomes 1, I have to subtract 2 from 1. 1 minus 2 is negative 2. Okay? So that's the answer. Give the Cartesian coordinates of the point A shown in the image. Well, you know how to do that, right? First you have to put negative 1 and then 2. So negative 1 and 2. Find the distance. We just did an example, so I'm just going to let you do this. So it looks like these are problems you can do. Plot the point. We know how to plot 5, negative 2. We go to 5 and go to negative 2, right? Go to 5 and then go down 2. That's 5, negative 2. Alright, looks like we know how to do this. Let's move on to the next section, which is solve linear equation in one variable. Well, to solve a linear equation, we have to isolate x. So let's do that. So we got a bunch of x's on both sides here. So we're going to combine these, do the operations that are possible on each side. So x minus 5x, that's 1x minus 5x is negative 4x minus 11 is, now this 11 minus 9 is 2. So that's just 2 minus 12x. So now we have no more operations to do on each side, so we move everything, all the x's to one side. So I write negative 4x, keep that, bring this negative 12x to the left and make it plus 12x, right? So remember, I got rid of that already took care of that. And here I have a 2, and then minus 11 comes to this side, becomes plus 11. Now, on the left I have 12x plus negative 4x, which is 8x, and I have 13 on the right. So x is 13 over 8. So that is the answer. 13 over 8. And you can see in the answer explanation as well. But basically what we have to do is isolate what? X. This is similar, I'll let you do that. And let's see, this is even easier, right? So we add 2 to both sides, or move this minus 2 to the other side and make it positive. And that's an easy one. So let's see if we can find anything. I don't see any problems here that you wouldn't be able to do. So I'm just going to move on. This one as well, very similar structure. I did one for you. Alright, so let's move on to the next section. So solving rational equations. Now rational equations requires us to get rid of the denominators that have variables in them, because with the denominator that has a variable, we won't be able to isolate it. So for example, in this problem, we need to get the denominators. Now how many denominators do we have? We have 3x, we have 4x, and we have 2. Now to find the common denominator, we need to multiply. We need to make sure they're in factored form. So this is already in factored form, but this is not. So we're going to write it as 2 squared times x. This one is already in a factored form, and this is in factored form. Now, how many different factors do you see here? Here is one, here's another one, and here is another one. Now notice this 2 is the same as that 2, so it's the same factor with different exponent. This is exponent of 1, this is exponent of 2. This x is the same as this x. So there are only 3 factors, 3, 2, and x. And once we have all the different factors, then we have to pick the largest exponent of each factor. Now, all of these factors are to the first power, so we just pick 3 and x to the first. But 2, this is the larger factor, so we have to raise it to second power. So this number is our LCD, or the lowest common denominator. So 3 times 4 is 12, so that's 12x. Now I know you could do this in your head, but this is the procedure that works for any number of denominators and any structure, no matter how complicated the structures are. So let's do that now. Once we have the LCD, we multiply everything by LCD. So we're going to have to multiply 12 times, I mean not 12, but 12x. So 12x times 2 over 3x minus 12x times 1 over 4x equals to 12x times negative 1/2. So now this x cancels that x, 12 cancels this, so you get 4, so 4 times 2 is 8, minus this x cancels that x, so we get basically 12 divided by 4, which is 3, equals to, now 12x times a minus, this is a minus 1, that would be a negative number. X doesn't go anywhere, we have only one x, so we have to write it. And 12 divided by 2 is 6, that's negative 6x. Now this is 5 equals to negative 6x, so x is 5 over negative 6. Now we always have to check and see if this number makes any of the denominators 0, then it shouldn't be a solution. But in this case, we are okay. So the answer is negative 5 over 6. Okay. Okay, so let's do one more. So in this case, we have two denominators, but they're all the same. We have denominator of 1 here, but this is easy. Multiply everything by x minus 2. So let's get a whiteboard here. So here, the work is easy. LCD is already x minus 2, right? Because this denominator is 1, and x minus 2 is the LCD. So multiply everything by LCD. 3 times x minus 2 equals to, not equals to, but minus 7 over x minus 2 times x minus 2 equals to 6 over x minus 2 times x minus 2, like that. Now, 3 times x minus 2 is 3x minus 6. And this goes away, so we get minus 7. And this goes away, we just get 6. So 3x minus 13 equals to 6. So that means 3x equals to 19. We move the 13 to the other side. So x is 19 divided by 3. Okay? 19 divided by 3. And again, it doesn't make any of the denominators 0, so it's a good solution. Okay, is this similar? I'm just going to skip that one and see if we can find anything. This one, we got two denominators. The denominators are, x and x plus 1. So the good denominator, common denominator, would be x times x plus 1. Those are the only factors. So we multiply. Put this negative in the numerator. So negative 1 over x times x plus 1 equals to negative 6 over x plus 1 times x plus 1, like that. Now this x cancels that x, so it would be negative x plus 1 equals to, this cancels that, you get negative 6x. So that's negative x minus 1 equals to negative 6x. And if you do some moving things around, I'm going to move the 6x to the left and then move the 1, negative 1 to the right, becomes a positive 1. So 5x equals to 1, so x has to be 1 over 5. And again, it doesn't make any of the denominators 0, so we pick that as the solution here. So the solution is 1 over 5. All right, so here's another one. In this case, we have, let's see. So we have a bunch of denominators, and this denominator, this is easy to deal with. This is just that. This is just one factor. But this one right here can be factored into 2. And I'm sure you remember, we need two numbers, multiply, get 6, you have to get 5. Well, 3 and 2, and they both have to be positive. So a good common denominator would be, well, all different factors, there are only 2 different factors, right? So x plus 3 times x plus 2 is the LCD. So multiply everything. If I multiply this by that, I put the negative in the numerator, and then x plus 3, and then times x plus 2 times x plus 3. Minus, I'm going to just keep it keep the 4 there because I have a minus here. 4 over x plus 2, and then times x plus 3 times x plus 2 equals to 7 over this whole thing times x plus 3 times x plus 2. Now, this thing we know is the same as the factors that we just found, so they cancel each other. So on the right, we just have 7. Now on the left here, x plus 3 cancels x plus 3, so we get negative 5 times x plus 2. There's a minus here. This cancels that one, so we just get minus 4 times x plus 3 equals to 7, right? It's a little bit off here. Let me erase that too so you don't get it confused. So this is equal to just 7. Alright, so this is just a multiplication. Negative 5x minus 10 minus 4x minus 12 equals to 7. So minus 5x and minus 4x is minus 9x, and the minus 10 and the minus 12 is minus 22. So negative 9x equals to, if you bring this minus 22 to the right hand side, that would be 29. So x equals to negative 29 over 9. And that's the answer that we got, negative 29 over 9. And it doesn't make any of the denominators 0, right? So it's a good answer. All right, so that's how we solve rational equations. There are a few more similar structures. I'll let you do these and move on to identifying the slopes and intercepts. So let's talk about that. Now we talked about forms of lines, and we got 2 forms. Let me talk about it quickly here. So we have 2 forms when we have a slope and we have a point x1, y1. Then we can write an equation for a line as y minus y1 equals to m times x minus x1. Now, if we solve for y here, and that was the last thing I did in the previous video, if I solve for y here, I get y minus y1, y equals to y1. I'm just going to move y1 to the right hand side, so I get m times x minus x1 plus y1, and y equals to mx minus mx1 plus y1, and this would be y equals to mx, and then I can separate all this, just write it as b plus b, whatever that is, I let it be b, right? Now this form right here is a slope intercept, because this number ends up being the intercept of this equation, y-intercept. Because when x is 0, if you substitute 0 here, you basically get this expression, and this expression we just call it b. So there are 2 forms for an equation of a line: mx plus b, which is the slope-intercept form, and this one, which is a slope-intercept. Point slope. This is a slope-intercept, and this is point slope. Slope-intercept, point slope. Okay, so that's the idea of writing equation for a line. Now here it says find the equation of a line which has a slope -6 and y-intercept 10. Well, that would mean that m here is -6 and this plus b here is plus 10, right? So that's all there is to it. So it would be -6x plus 10. -6x plus 10. All right. Now it says find the x-intercept of the following line. How do we find the x and the y-intercept of any equation? Well, that's easy. To find the x-intercept, all you have to do is let y be 0. And to find the y-intercept, let x be 0. So here we want to find the x-intercept, or let y be 0. So we end up with basically a linear equation to solve. So 8 over 7x equals to -4. So x is going to equal to -4 times the reciprocal of 8 over 7. So x is going to be equal to, what is x equal to? Well, it would be negative. 4 by 4 is 1, 8 by 4 is 2, so -7 over 2. So notice that you have to type in a point, not a number. It has to be a point. So the y of it is -7 over 2, and the x of it is going to be, the x of it is going to be -7 over 2, and the y is going to be 0. So don't put a number here. It has to be an ordered pair, right? All right. Let's continue with this. Find the x-intercept of the following. It's very similar, so I'm just going to let you do it. It says find the slope of the line. Give your answer as a single number. What's the slope of this line? Well, if you compare it to mx plus b, the slope is obviously -3. All right. It says find the y-intercept of this. Well, y-intercept is that right there, +2. Or if you let x be 0, then y is going to be obviously +2. All right. Find the slope of the line through the points lat. Well, how do we find the slope? We already know how to find the slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that would be -9 over, right? That's the formula. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And this is the same as before. So it looks like we're pretty good with this section. So identify a slope and intercept. We got that. All right, let's go to find linear equations. So we have find the equation of a line that contains the points -8, -1, and 1, -1, -2. Well, what we have to do is find, since we have 2 points, remember we have 2 different ways we can write the equation of a line. This one and this one. Now we're going to use this because we have 2 points, so we can find the slope. So the slope would be something minus something over something minus something. So what? -2 minus -1 over -1 minus -8, which is -2 plus 1, that's -1, negative 1 plus 8, that's positive 7. So that's the slope. Now, we have to use either point, doesn't matter which one. Let's use this one because it's smaller numbers. So y minus something equals to something times x minus something. What? Well, this one would be negative 2. This one would be negative 1. I'm using this point as my x1 and y1. And then my slope is negative 1 over 7. So that's y plus 2 equals to negative 1 over 7 times x plus 1. And that's y plus 2 equals to negative 1/7 x minus 1 over 7. So y equals to negative 1/7 x minus 1 over 7 minus 2, right? Now, minus 2 with the denominator of 7 would be 14 over 7. That would be minus 14 over 7. So minus 1 over 7 minus 14 over 7 is minus 15 over 7, right? And that's the answer. So let's it says write the equation in standard form. So what we did, well, what I did, I wrote it in slope-intercept form because I didn't read it carefully, but that's okay. So we had y minus y plus 2 equals to negative 1 over 7 times x plus 1, right? So if you want to write in a standard form, just multiply by 7 to get rid of the 7 here. Multiply by 7, this is 7y plus 14 equals to negative x plus 1, because we don't want fraction in a standard form. In a standard form is this form, ax plus by equals to c. That's the standard form. So this would be 7y plus 14 equals to negative x minus 1. So we're going to move the x to this side, move the 14 to the other side. So x comes to this side, becomes positive, and negative 1 minus 14. So that's a negative 15 there. So x plus 7y equals to negative 15. That's the standard form. In standard form, you have to have x first, and then y, and then a number should be on this side, and no fractions in a standard form. All right. So it's the same thing. You just have to write it in slope-intercept form. And let's see what else we have here. Find the equation of the line through the points. Well, these are all similar, so I'm just going to move on and go to the next section, which is parallel and perpendicular lines. So let me have some enough space here so I can talk about it. So when two lines are parallel, that means they have the same rate. So that means they're going to be parallel, because if they're not the same rate, if one of them increases this way and the other one this way, then they eventually intersect. So in order for them not to intersect, they have to have the same rate. That means if this has a slope of m1, this has a slope of m2, they have to be equal. So we say that if L1 is parallel to L2, then m1 has to equal to m2, and the other way around. So if two lines are parallel, then the slopes are the same. Now, what if two lines are perpendicular? Now, perpendicular means intersecting at 90-degree angle, 90 degrees. Now, it turns out that the only way this is possible is if one of them is M1 and the other one is M2, then if you multiply them, M1 times M2, you get -1. If that is true, then the two lines are perpendicular. Now, it's not enough for M1 and M2 to be different. If they're different, then we know for sure that the lines are intersecting. But if they're different, but the product is -1, then we can say the lines are perpendicular. So, let me write the rule over here. So I say L1 is perpendicular to L2, and that's from geometry, something like that. Then M1 times M2 has to be -1, or the other way around. Now, how can two numbers be multiplied and result in -1? Well, the only way this is possible is first they have to be reciprocal, and they have to be opposites. Not opposites, I mean negative. Of opposite of each other, not opposites, because opposites are like 2 and -2. Okay, so two numbers have to be negative reciprocal of each other, right? In order for this to be true. For example, if one of them is 3, the other one has to be 1/3 negative. Then the answer is -1. If one of them is 2/5, the other one has to be 5/2 but negative. Alright, so now we know how to tell if two lines are perpendicular or they are parallel. So what we want in this example is find the equation of the line through that point that we are given, which is perpendicular to this line right here, Okay, so let me erase this so we can do it. So in order to be perpendicular to this line, first of all, what's the slope of this line? Is 1/4, right? Because we can write this as 1/4 x minus 1. So M1 is 1/4, so M2 has to be reciprocal of this and negative. So -4 is the slope that we want. So this is the point and that's the slope. We can write the equation easily. Y minus something equals to m times x minus something. So this 5 right here goes here. This -4 goes there. And this slope goes there. Right? So we have y minus 5 equals to -4x. Now this is actually a plus 4, right? Minus minus is plus. So it's -4x minus 16. So y equals to -4x. Minus 16 plus 5 is minus 11. So -4x minus 11 is the answer. All right. Okay, so determine if the following lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Now, how can we tell? Well, we know the slope of this line. We know the slope of that line is, let's see. So we know the slope of this line is 8/3. So that's our M1. Now, for M2, for these two to be perpendicular, M2 has to be 3/8 negative, and see if there are. If it is, then if this one, the slope is that, then they're perpendicular. If it's not, if they're equal, they're parallel. If they're just different but not in this form, then they're neither. So what's the slope of this line, the second one? Well, to find the slope of the second one, we're gonna have to isolate y. So 12y equals to 32x plus 3. I just moved that 32x to the other side. So y equals to 32 divided by 12 and then 3 divided by 12. Now 32 divided by 12, 32 by 8 is, by 4 is 8, and 32 divided by 4 is 8, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So it looks like the slope of this line is actually the same as that one. It's 8/3, so that means they're parallel. Now, if we found that the slope was that, then they would be perpendicular. If not, neither. So in this case, it looks like the lines are actually parallel. Okay, determine if the following are parallel, perpendicular. Okay, so right now, again, let's look at our rule here. So we know the slope of this one, let's call it m1, is 1. Now what's the slope of that one? m2. We don't know. Okay, so y equals to negative x minus 5. Looks like m2 is negative 1. Right? Now, it looks like these are what? These are perpendicular because 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Or you can say reciprocal of 1 is just 1, and then multiply by negative, you get negative 1. So these are perpendicular. All right, I think we got this under control for perpendicular and parallel lines. So let's do some word problem with linear equations. Okay, so there are two numbers which add up to 36. If one number is 8 more than the other, find the two numbers. Okay, so let's write some equations here. So there are two numbers. One of them is x, and the other one we don't know either. We're going to write y, but instead of writing y, I want to write something that is related to this variable, because in math it's easier to solve equations if you have only one unknown, right? So we keep that one number. What is the other one? Well, it says one number is 8 more than the other one. So instead of writing y, I just write that number plus 8. That's 8 more. Now we know that the two numbers add up to 36. So that means x plus 8 equals to 36. So that's 2x plus 8 equals to 36. So 2x equals to 36 minus 8. So 2x equals to 28. So x equals to 14. So if this is 14, then the other one has to be 14 plus 8. So those are our two numbers. That's how you find them. So 14 and 22, right? All right. Moving company, a moving company charges a base fee of $300 for a move plus $75 per hour of time. If H represents the number of hours of time and C represents the total charge for the move, find a relationship between C and H. Okay, so C and H are related based on this story we are given. So a company charges a base fee of $300 plus a plus for a move plus $75 per hour. So $300, $75 per hour, and if hour is h, so that would be 75 times h, which is number of hours, plus 300. So that should be our cost. So cost should be 75h plus 300. 75h plus 300. Okay. You're considering a moving company to help you. They charge $6 per hour plus a base. If C represents total cost and H represents that, what is that? Well, we just did similar one, so let's move on. You may remember that the area of a triangle is that 1/2 base times height, where B is the base and H is the height. Suppose the area of a triangle is 50 square feet, and the base is 4 times the height. Find the base of the triangle in feet. Okay? So here we are given this equation that says A equals to 1/2 B times H. But it says base of the triangle and H is the height. Now suppose that the area of a triangle is 50. So A equals to 50, and the base is 4 times the height. That means B is 4 times the height. Now find the base of the triangle. So the base is 4 times the height. What does that mean? Well, that means I can substitute. We want to find a base, so I'm just going to substitute 4h for B, or I can substitute B over 4 for H. That's the same thing. Doesn't matter. Well, let me do that. That's easier. So A is going to equal to 1/2, and instead of B, I'm going to put 4h and then times H. So that means that A equals to, this 2 cancels this 4, so it would be 2h squared, right? So that's the formula that has no B in it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write it here. I'm going to write 50, which is the area, equals to 2 times h squared. So h squared has to be 50 divided by 2, which is 25. So since h cannot be negative, h has to be 5. And if h has to be 5, then base has to be 20, right? And that's how we do it. So the base has to be 20 feet. All right, one number is 8 more than 3 times another number. If the sum of the numbers is 28, find the numbers. Let me do this one as well together, and then we are going to move on to the another section. Okay, so we got 2 numbers. One of them we call x. So one number is 8 more than 3 times another number. So the other number is 8 more than 3 times the other number, right? So the 2 numbers are x and 3x plus 8. Instead of using another variable, we can just use that. All right, so what do we know? We know the sum has to be 28. So x plus 3x plus 8 has to be 28. So that's 4x plus 8 has to be 28. So 4x is 20. So x is 5. And if this is 5, that's 3 times 5 plus 8, which is 23. So the answers are 5 and 23. Alright, so let's move on. We do another section. So problem solving. Let's do some of these problems. Use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the leg in the triangle shown below. So we know in a Pythagorean property, it tells us that if you have a right triangle, in a right triangle, if this is hypotenuse and these are the legs, then we know that c squared equals to a squared plus b squared. So here, let's call this x, which is missing. So we know 3 squared plus x squared has to be 5 squared. That's 25, and that's x squared plus 9. So x squared has to be 25 minus 9, which is 16. So x has to be plus and minus 4. Take square root of both sides here. But we don't care about the negative because this side cannot be negative 4. It has to be 4. Okay, so that's the answer for. Alright, a triangular flag has area that, and the height is that. What is the length of the base? Okay, so we know, again, formula for the area of a triangle. It's the formula for area of a triangle. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times the height. So here, area of a triangle is 493. That's 1/2. The height is 17, so that's b and then times 17. So what is the length of the base? So here this would be just 17 over 2, b equals to 493. So b has to equal to 493 multiplied by 2 over 17, right? And we don't want to do, you want to do arithmetic in your head if you want to practice. So what we can do just 493 times 2 divided by 17, and that's 58. So the answer is 58. Okay. All right. Margaret's car loan statement said that she would pay this much in interest for 5 years at an interest rate of 9.8%. Assuming this is an example of a simple interest, how much did Margaret borrow to buy the car? Now, a simple interest is when we have a principal amount and then we add to it some interest. Now, the interest is given by, well, we have a rate per year. So this is rate per year. And then we have t, which is the number of years. And then, so if you want to find the interest, basically you have to take the principal, multiply it by the interest rate, and multiply it by how many years. So this interest here is really nothing but PRT. Now, so if you factor the P out, it would be 1 plus RT. So that's the simple interest formula. You can write it right here. A is P times 1 plus R times T. And remember, R is rate per year and T is number of years. So now that we have a formula, we can actually do this. So what do we know? Well, we know that she would pay $7,683.20 in interest for 5 years at an interest rate of 9.8%. Assuming this is an example of simple interest, how much did Margaret borrow to buy the car? So the interest, which is just the PRT part of this, so basically what we have here is A equals to the principal amount plus PRT. Now, how much Margaret borrowed is because we have to find it by setting this equal to that, right? Because that's how much that is. So 7683.2 has to equal to P, we don't know. Interest rate 9.8, move the decimal to the left 2 places. So 9.812. So it would be 0.098, that's 0.9, that's 9.8%. And then how many years? 5. So basically what we have here is this number on the left, and then we have P times 5 times 0.098, right? And we can do this with the calculator. 5 times 0.098 is 0.49. So this is basically 0.49p, and on the left we have this number. So the principal amount would be that number divided by 0.49. Okay, what is that? Well, who knows? 7683.2 divided by 0.49, which is $15,680. That's how much Margaret borrowed. Okay, $15,680. All right. Solve the formula for y. Now sometimes we are asked to not solve for a number, but solve for a variable. So here in this expression, we want to solve for y. That means you have to get y by itself on one side. Well, this is easy. Just move the y to the right, and then move the 4 to the left. Y is by itself. So y equals to x plus 4. Right? So x plus 4 is the answer. All right. The angles in a triangle are such that one angle is that more than the smallest angle, while the third angle is 2 times as large as the smallest angle. Find the measures of all 3 angles. Okay. Now, in a triangle, we know that the angles add up to, in a triangle, if we have 3 angles, let's call them alpha, beta, and gamma. So their sum is going to be 180 degrees. We know that. So we know alpha plus beta plus gamma equals to 180. Now, what do we know here? We know it doesn't matter which one's the smallest or largest, we just, in the picture, we just assume they are. So one angle is 128. So let's say this is 128. No, 128 more than, not 128. So one angle is 128 more than the smallest angle. Let's call alpha x, and let's call that the smallest angle. So one angle, so we call that x. So one angle is 128 more than the smallest. So here's the smallest angle. So the other one is x plus 128. Okay? Is more than the smallest angle. While the third angle is 2 times as large as the smallest angle. So the third one is 2 times as much as the smallest angle. So these are the 3 angles. So let's write them here. X plus 128 plus 2x. They have to add up to 180. So that's 4x plus 128 equals to 180. So 4x has to equal to 180 minus 128. Now that would be a 52. 4x equals to 52. So x is 52 divided by 4, which is 13. So x is 13. So if this is 13, this would be 13 plus 128, and this one would be 2 times 13. 2 times 13. So those are the 3 angles of the triangle. And we have them right here. 13, 141, and 26 are the 3 angles. Alright, so I'm going to let you do the rest of these. So we got to the complex numbers. We got to the complex numbers, and I'm going to make another video and do some of these rest of these problems for you. So this video we're going to stop at basics of complex numbers, and in the next video I'm going to do the rest of it. So I'm gonna stop right here. So I see you in the next video. Okay, have a good take care.